Anyone with even a smattering of American history knows about the assassination of Abraham Lincoln at Ford's Theater on April 14th, 1865. Far fewer know about the couple that was sitting in the box with him that night. Their names were Clara Harris and Henry Rathbone, childhood sweethearts engaged to be married, a young couple with nothing but happiness and promise ahead of them. But the repercussions of that fateful night would irrevocably alter their lives, casting them as feature players in a horror story of their very own. Clara Harris was born in 1834, the daughter of New York Senator Ira Harris, who was a staunch Union supporter and a close personal friend of Abraham Lincoln. Henry Rathbone was born in 1837, the son of the mayor of Albany, New York. And when his father died, Henry's mother married the widower Senator Harris. That's right, Clara and Henry were step-siblings, and had been so since the ages of 14 and 11, respectively. Despite being raised in the same household from relatively young ages, the two eventually fell in love and became engaged. Their marriage would be long delayed, however, first by the interruption of the Civil War, during which Henry served the Union Army, first as a captain, before ascending to the rank of major. And their engagement would be further prolonged by the events of April 14th, 1865. On that night, the Lincolns had invited the young couple to the theater after several would-be guests, including Ulysses S. Grant, as well as a few other high-ranking government officials and their spouses, had declined. And just a side note, even though Henry was attending the theater as Lincoln's personal guest, it seemed to be tacitly understood that as a military officer, he was also there in the capacity of security, like a presidential bodyguard. When John Wilkes Booth slipped into the box and fired that fateful shot into the back of Lincoln's head, Henry leapt into action. He threw himself on Booth, the two wrestled, and in the ensuing scuffle, Booth viciously slashed at Henry with his dagger, nearly severing his arm, stabbing him in the chest before himself leaping from the box onto the stage. All the while, Clara, drenched in Henry's blood, screamed, "The president has been shot." Despite his very severe wounds, Henry did keep it together enough to escort Mrs. Lincoln to the house across the street where her husband lay dying before he himself passed out from blood loss. Obviously, we know Lincoln's fate, but against all odds, Henry survived his injuries from that night. His convalescence was long and arduous, but with Clara by his side, supporting him and nursing him back to health, he would eventually make a full recovery. At least physically. Mentally, not so much. Paranormal enthusiasts will know that Lincoln's ghost is one of America's most famous apparitions, with countless reported sightings by residents and visitors of the White House over the last century and a half. But it seems another ghost was born that night, one that would haunt the Rathbones for the remainder of their days. After all the setbacks, after all the interruptions, all the trauma, Clara and Henry married at long last in July of 1867. And their marriage appeared to be a happy one at first. They were clearly very fond of each other, they had 3 children together, and they seemed to enjoy a comfortable, affluent life in Washington's highest social circles. But even in those close circles, it was well known that Lincoln's assassination continued to haunt the couple. Clara, for her part, kept the white, blood-stained dress she had been wearing that night, storing it in a secluded closet in their summer house. And maybe it was the symbolic weight of what it recalled, but the dress itself soon became a sort of haunted focal object. Claire claimed to hear phantom screams whenever she looked at it. She, as well as others, reported strange visions and disturbing sounds whenever they were in the vicinity of the dress. After a particularly frightening incident in which she believed she had encountered Lincoln's ghost, Clara finally had the closet bricked up. And Henry, unfortunately, seemed to fare far worse. He never recovered from what happened at Ford's Theater that spring night. In the years that followed, many who knew him described him as being haunted by a debilitating sense of guilt. He blamed himself for failing to prevent Lincoln's death, and the shame of that supposed inaction began to slowly erode his physical and mental health. He reportedly suffered from physical ailments, constant fears, and terrible delusions. He began to drink and gamble to excess. He became increasingly jealous of the attention Clara would receive from other men and the attention she paid to their children. On more than one occasion, he was observed to be verbally abusive to his wife. Despite all this, Clara stood by him and supported him. Then, in 1881, President James Garfield was assassinated. This second assassination of the nation's commander-in-chief triggered what we might today call a PTSD response in Henry. His depression and anxiety worsened, so much so that the next president, Chester A. Arthur, who was a close personal friend of the family, arranged to have Henry sent to Germany as an ambassador, hoping that the change of scene would help combat his melancholy. Spoiler alert, It didn't work. In Germany, Henry's mental state darkened still further. He began suffering severe physical pain from an anxiety-induced ulcer, and his jealousy and resentment of Clara only seemed to get worse as well. On Christmas Eve, 1833, Henry suffered a full-blown psychotic episode. Seeming to believe that there was an intruder in the house, he flew into a fit of agitation, threatening his wife and the children. Clara wisely locked the children in their bedroom and attempted to calm him. This confrontation would end with Henry pulling out a revolver and shooting Clara in the head before stabbing himself 5 times in the chest, as if it's some grotesque reenactment of the violence of that night at Ford's Theater. For the second time, Henry defied the odds in surviving his injuries. He was convicted of the murder of his wife, and after being declared insane, he was committed to an asylum. Rambling and delusional, Henry Rathbone lived the remainder of his life in a German asylum for the criminally insane, with only the ghosts of his past to keep him company. Lincoln may have been Booth's intended target, but the tragedy of that fateful night would ripple outward, claiming Clara Harris and Henry Rathbone as collateral victims. A couple with nothing but happiness and promise ahead of them, destroyed, haunted by the ghosts of a nation's collective trauma.